So, chapter 2. First of all, Rudo is still alive, and we heard that people consider being thrown in here a death sentence. So, either that means that Rudo is just built different and survived the fall, or everybody survives the fall and ends up dying here, caught by the monsters. And this latter option actually allows us some wiggle room for new characters to show up here as survivors. So, I would be expecting that. At the start of the chapter, we see Rudo running from three living piles of trash. But he is able to avoid them all, and while doing so, he sees a human skull on the ground. And his reaction is to feel anger and frustrated from the injustice that was committed to him. And now that you think about it, he never felt unjustified. He was born in this society, so living in the slum and being an outcast was not something unjust. It was fair. It was how he was brought to this world, so it was normal for him. He was supposed to be there. So even though it was a crappy situation, it was just, and he probably deserved it. But this, he doesn't deserve it. And he knows that. Murders go to the abyss. And he is no murderer. He knows he didn't kill Ragto, he knows who did it, or at least he thinks so, and apparently he's going to do anything and everything in his power to prove his innocence and get back to the place he should be at. And this is just another character trait that we hadn't seen yet. We already know he cares about others, and that he feels a need to help those who are discarded by society. We know that he feels a need to help those who feel broken. Besides that, we already know he has a very, very strong sense of justice. This will be very important to see how he acts in the future, and how he is going to react once he learns that the situation he was in before was actually very, very unjust. And I'm just really curious to see how he's going to act against the people who put him in that unfair, unjust situation. He then falls down a hill of trash, and we see the air down there is almost unbreathable. So much so that he ends up coughing blood, and that cough shows his position to the monsters, who apparently locate themselves by some sort of sonic radar. But Rudo is not done yet. Yes, he is fucked up. Yes, he is almost without any air left in his lungs. Yes, he's probably going to die breathing this air down here. But he still gets up to face off against these big piles of trash. And as he prepares to fight them, we see someone in the distance. A survivor, or maybe a citizen, we don't actually know. Rudo fights the smaller monster, who is pretty much his size, and he actually is able to cut through it with what I assume to be one of these? And it would be pretty funny to think that his life is depending on this shit. Really, if my life depended on that, I'd be damned. But hey, if it works out, it works out. And it looks like the monster kind of explodes after being cut. Or if it didn't explode, it just threw a massive attack. But either way, he throws a lot of trash on top of him. A lot of heavy trash. And Rudo is pretty much unable to do anything by this point in time. He is fucked. But that's when, of course, our new, very important survivor shows up and saves him with an umbrella. One umbrella holds tons of trash on top of it, and it doesn't even flinch. I mean, it's an umbrella, it doesn't flinch, but you get my point. The survivor uses a pretty cool mask, and he gives one to Rudo. Not one as cool as his, but one that works nonetheless. And this shows he is pretty adapted to the abyss, which means he probably lives here for quite a long time. I mean, he has the tech to survive here, and he even walks around with a spare mask. Which means he probably does this on a regular basis, right? I mean, if not, why would he have one? Maybe that spare mask is for the rare occasion that he actually finds someone who fell to the abyss and didn't die. And in that case, we can also assume that there are probably other people here who are friends with him, or at least know him. But that's a step too far. Let's just stick with what we got here. They then have a small conversation, and the survivor mentions that this It's not the underground, as Rudo refers to it, but the surface, which probably means that people who live in the city and in the slums came from down here. And the reason they went up there is probably because, well, they trashed this place, didn't they? So, I mean, it's fair to assume that this is why they left it, and this is why they refer to it as the underground, to create a disconnection, a detachment from this place, as if it was an unexplored region that just happens to be really messed up. It works not only as a way to create fear in the hearts of the ones who live in the slum, therefore creating political power for the ones who live in the city, but also as a way to hide the mistakes of the past, therefore erasing any wish or desire that anyone would have of retaliation against the people who did what they did to the underground. And here we also learn that these things actually do locate themselves using sound. And because Rudo cannot shut up, they are located and now are on the hunt again. The survivor, though, activates his umbrella by imbuing it with what seems to be some sort of chakra, some sort of energy that flows from him to the object, and is apparently going to be the power system of the manga. And his umbrella turns into a fucking war machine. It gets some badass blades out of nowhere and becomes a pretty strong spear, I would say. Now, the fact that these monsters exist and this feat lead me to believe that the power system of this manga is the soul. Now remember, back in the first chapter, in the first page, we have a couple of exposition phrases that say things that are cherished for have souls. And this trash is all made of things that were once cherished for in one way or another by someone, meaning they had souls at some point in time. So if we work with that theory, we can assume that the monsters are either souls that end up devouring other souls and becoming stronger and adding not only their metaphysical aspects to them, but also their physical materials to them, creating these incredibly big monsters. Or maybe these souls are not actually devoured by one another, but they act in some sort of symbiotic process in which they all bundle together and create this amalgamation of souls that is able to hold all these pieces of trash together and create these big monsters. I am not sure of which one it is, but if I had to choose one, I would go with the first. But either way, I am really sure that the reason these monsters exist is the soul that was once cherished for and that is still inside of them. And as for the survivor, I assume he can use his soul as some sort of chakra that he then uses to imbue his umbrella with. And this is what ends up creating the blades in it. And it is something that probably also enhances the properties of the umbrella, and maybe might even give it some more properties. And of course, from these analysis of the soul, I can also assume that they can use it to enhance not only objects, but also themselves and their abilities and their bodies. And the reason I say that is because in the first chapter, Rudo dodges bullets. That is not human. That is very, very not human. He doesn't dodge one bullet. He dodges like 3 or 4 at once that were shot at the same time without getting hit by any of them. Which means if this soul thing that I'm theorizing about really is true, he might be a natural for it. He might have a real big affinity with it that allows him to unknowingly use it to enhance his reflexes and his speed. And then we have him show his skills with the umbrella by killing all of the monsters around them. He spins them, he throws them, and the last one he goes really hard on and meteor meshes them. This guy is on another level. And I can't stress how cool his weapon and his looks are. And his different fighting style already brought something really different from what we're used to seeing in manga in general. And considering the fact that Rudo is now stuck in here, unable to leave or to do anything else, and needs complete guidance from this guy to learn how to live, I guess we're going to see some sort of Jedi training going on here. Rudo learning to use his soul and learning to fight these monsters, and even becoming strong enough to be able to go out by himself and go back to where he was. And of course, use his new acquired, well refined powers to complete his vengeance. This only gets better and better, and we're only 2 chapters in. I can't imagine what the future holds for this manga. I hope you're enjoying it as much as I am, and if you are, leave a like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below. That would be pretty nice. Thank you, and I'll see you next week with another Gachiakuta chapter review.